Have any of you ever experienced sleep paralysis before? Anything truly strange with it? I've been experiencing it quite a lot recently, or at least I thought I had, but I had an incident that made me think that there was a lot more to it than maybe I first realized. It was really innocuous at first, although when it's all new to you, it feels really realistic and scary. I remember the first time I woke up from this horrible nightmare that I had. In the nightmare, some guy had managed to somehow pry open the window in the room opposite to mine and was stealing my belongings. He got into my room, and when he realized that the house was not empty and that I had seen him, he lunged for me and managed to slit my throat. It was so quick I was not even able to jump up and fight back. It's really strange though, because it felt so real. I felt all of it. I felt the burning sensation on my neck as he dragged the tiny blade he had across my skin. I felt my body go cold and drain of life. But even though I was dead, my eyes were still seeing. I saw the man steal something from my bedside table and then exit through my window. Outside my window, where the man had fled to, I could see these tiny eyes watching me, and then I died for good. It was the most surreal nightmare I had ever experienced. So imagine my intense fear when I opened up my eyes, frozen to the bed like I had chains on me, and I could see those very same eyes looking at me through the bottom corner of my window. It's hard to describe them. They had this intense black all around, followed by this ring of whiteness, followed by more black around the rest of the eyes where white should have been. I'm sure it's easy for you to say right now that my brain was just using my nightmare to frighten me, but I didn't know that then. The eyes did nothing but watch me for a long, long time. And this would happen most nights, probably for around a week. A horrible, intense dream about me being robbed or murdered or something of the like, followed by those eyes watching me. The dream would not be the exact same every time. There would be little deviations. Sometimes I would be able to react just half a second before being killed. Sometimes I would be woken up and I would realize a little bit sooner what was happening. Sometimes the thief would not steal anything first and would rush right for me. I'm not sure why it changed just so slightly. But aside from these really small changes, it was mostly the same. I remember one time, as I was just locked to the bed, I actually saw the eyes move. Well, I actually saw them blink first. They had never blinked before. When they blinked, I could not make out anything around them. They were like two lanterns that drew you in and made it impossible for you to focus on anything else. When they came back, I saw them raise up into the air, by a foot, by 2 feet, by 3, until they were now at the top of my window looking down onto me. And then I saw those two eyes turn and walk away. That sent chills up my spine. After I saw that, I remember realizing that I had sweat pouring down onto my face, and through the entire ordeal, I had instinctively moved my hands upwards and had been wiping away the sweat, all while watching this. I didn't think that was possible during sleep paralysis. Those eyes persisted for a few more days. I was getting less and less sleep. I did not want to keep seeing that nightmare over again. The sleep paralysis was sapping my energy and ruining my performance at work. I was actually in line for a promotion which was unfortunately scuppered because I was way too scatterbrained during a meeting and I just blew my chance. Still though, I did not want to risk falling asleep again. I did not want to see those eyes again. Well, the weekend that I had off just last week is where it started to all go wrong. I tried to stay up for the entire 72 hours. I failed around 24 hours in. What stood out to me is this time, my dreams were peaceful. I did not wake up in a cold sweat or panicked. I did not see anything horrible. I felt oddly tranquil. Until I woke up, and I caught a sight of something clinging to my ceiling, a sight that I will never, ever forget. The first thing that struck me was those same eyes, basically lighting up the room. It almost seemed as if they had become brighter somehow. I could see this thing in its entirety now. It was clinging to my ceiling, as if it was laying down and clinging to it, only backwards. It was facing towards me with its head, but its hands and feet were pushed behind it, and I guess it was using them to grip. I could not see all that much of them. All I could see was the tiny little chips in the drywall where it looked like something small had pricked a hole. It was just staring at me. It was almost human. I don't even really know how to describe the thing in full. I remember it had these wings on its back that were tucked in and almost squashed due to it clinging to the ceiling. They looked huge with a lot of feathers, but they were stained in almost gray kind of color. It was that gray color that looked like it had been a white previously, but that had been dirtied. The face of the thing is mostly a blur in my mind, aside from those eyes when I try to remember. All I remember is it looked like a man, but not like a man. The skin was the same gray, but the skin was cracked in places. It was almost crumbling to dust, like the thing was made out of stone. The lips were chapped and almost seemed to have a hole, a piercing, right in the middle of them. I remember its arms and legs were really long, but had these weird joints, like the limbs were split into 2 or 3 pieces right in the middle. It was like some kind of grandiose dummy with all of the parts so you could move each individual piece. For the most part, it just stared at me. For as long as I can possibly remember, I was just frozen there, looking up at this thing as it tilted its head from side to side and occasionally adjusted its limbs from the side or upwards. It scuttled like a fucking spider when it moved, all without breaking my gaze. I remember sometime later, it could have been 5 minutes or 50 minutes, I have no idea. This thing became more and more blurry. I had this feeling in my head that is hard to describe. I could feel water rushing around in my head, like there was a little pool in there just splashing from side to side, but it felt warm and really heavy too. When I felt the warmness splashing against the side of my head, I felt this pulsing pain inside my head, just for half a second, just a flash, but it started to become more often. I kept feeling the splashing. I kept feeling the pulsing pain for longer and longer until it started to affect my vision too. My vision was starting to flash this hot white color, but every flash, the color started to change. There would be more and more color until eventually I had these images flashing in my vision, just these still images. The first image I saw was, I think, myself looking through the window in the room opposite me. That's what it felt like at first anyway. It was like a first-person still image. The next image I saw was the hallway. I saw the door opposite me being closed. Then I saw my room. I saw this image of myself on my bed with my eyes closed. Then I saw the aftermath. I saw my lifeless eyes and the bloody mess over my pillow and sheets. Then I saw whoever the images belonged to looking at the knife as they ran away. By the time it got to the final image, the pain was absolutely unbearable and I was on the verge of passing out. I could feel the sweat pouring down my head and my body was shivering. Eventually, these images started to fade back into the blaring white, and eventually, my vision went back to normal altogether. When it finally did, that thing was not on my ceiling anymore. The sun was starting to come up, and I did not know how long I had been in the bed looking at the ceiling for. The very next night is when everything happened. I was scared to even get in my bed, but eventually I did. I did not leave the house for the entire day. I felt like I was losing my mind. I knew that what I saw was not real and was just my mind playing a trick on me. I knew the vision in the nightmare was just that, a nightmare, a figment of my fucked up imagination. I was still awake at around 2 a.m., but I had all of the lights turned off in the house, and I heard a scratching on the window. My bedroom is set up so that with the door fully open, I can see partially into the room opposite me, but not the entire way. I could just make out one little corner of the window. I could not see anything except for darkness, but after a minute or so, I heard the faint squeak of the window, and I shit my pants. I should have gotten up and ran, but I just froze. I did not have a weapon I could get to in time. The door felt like it was a million miles away. I wanted to just hide underneath my cover and pretend that nothing was happening. I half hoped that it was just a nightmare again and not for real. Everything after that happened quicker than I expected, and because of this, I just have flashes of what happened to me. I remember seeing a shadow being cast in the room opposite me. I heard what sounded like heavy boots, but like someone was purposefully walking slowly and taking the weight off of the ground in order to make fainter steps in an effort to conceal themselves. I could not pretend anymore, and so I got out of my bed and ran to my wardrobe where I remembered I had a metal baseball bat. I know it sounds stupid that I did not remember or grab the thing earlier, but I was just so caught up in the fear. I half expected to not even be able to move when I tried. I guess I must have made a lot of noise in my haste, because in that instant, I heard pounding footsteps, and eventually, I saw a figure in my bedroom doorway that quickly ran towards me. I tried to swing, but I only connected with the thigh because I was in the process of being tackled to the ground. Whoever this was had a mask on, that stereotypical burglar balaclava, and they had a knife and was trying to put it up to my throat. I tried to shout and ask what the hell the guy was doing to tell him to get away, but he just grunted in response before smacking me with his free hand and telling me to shut up. The metal bat was caught underneath my right arm, which I had fallen onto and trapped when I was tackled. All I had to stop this guy was my left hand, and it was already bleeding, because all I could do was grip the bare blade and try to stop him from forcing it into my neck. Again, things happened so quickly and were so blurry at this point. I remember not really focusing on the guy in front of me, which was strange. I guess I already felt like I was going to die, like this was the end, and was pretty disconnected from my body. But I almost felt like my eyes and my mind was being drawn to something else, to some faint glint in the window of the room opposite to mine. I remember just seeing a slight flash of white, then another really rapidly, not very big, maybe the size of a coin. And before I knew it, my eyes were snapped back to the man who had basically sliced down and passed my hand and was preparing to pull back and use force to go for me again. I know it sounds like someone writing a stupid movie, but I could have sworn that time slowed down for me completely in that moment. Like everything was just a slideshow, and like I had all of the time in the world to analyze each and every image. It was a weird feeling, to say the least. I remember the robber never had a chance to bring the knife back down. He had this duffel bag type thing slung over his neck, but it was much smaller. But now, the strap was being pulled back against his throat, and the robber's eyes were wide. He took his free hand and clasped at his throat, and then I noticed. I did not see before because this whole time I was looking straight ahead at this man, but towering above me in the room, basically blocking all of the light coming from the doorway now. Those eyes were there again. I saw the eyes. I saw something digging into the shoulder of the man, and I heard him scream. And in those few seconds, I saw the man suddenly jerk backwards and being dragged across the floor on his back, while kicking out his legs and begging for help, begging me for help. The last image I remember seeing was that same thing from my ceiling. Those wings, whatever they were basically covering the man entirely. It was like this thing had a curtain over the man and part of itself. All I heard were the sounds. It sounded like someone chewing stringy beef. I don't remember how the thing left. I don't remember how the thing took the man out of my house. All I remember is suddenly being aware that I was on the phone to someone and was just rambling incoherently. I had called the police. They kept telling me to slow down and that I was not making any sense. When I became aware, I heard myself rambling about a man breaking in and something taking him, something attacking him. They asked if it was me who attacked him, and I said no. I said it was something else. Even when the cops finally got there, I was just out of my mind. I could not talk slowly at all. Paramedics had to see to me. I guess they figured I just went crazy from the shock and the trauma. I was eventually able to spit it out and tell them that the man had broken in and attacked me with a knife. I remember raising my hand to them and showing them the deep cuts, and I just started sobbing and saying, "I don't know if he's alive," through snot and tears. The cop was really nice, actually. He kept reassuring me, telling me that it was just self-defense, that I did not do anything wrong, that I had the right to protect myself from any harm, especially in my own home. I could not stop crying. I could not stop telling them I didn't do it. I guess they figured that I was just in shock and trying to explain myself, trying to explain that I did not do anything intentionally. That was a whirlwind of a time, to say the least. The police obviously did not try and pursue a case against me. They believed I'd acted purely in self-defense. They almost tried to wrestle me away, though, that first night. I remember there being one officer in the room opposite me initially and just checking out the scene. I remember that by the time I left, that 4 more cops had appeared and were just standing in a circle in that room and talking to each other. They all looked shocked, like they had seen a ghost. I tried to run in and see while I was rambling, trying to explain to them as well, but I was grabbed and basically hauled away. I remember that they shut the door and said, "No one else gets in this room." I saw it though. I saw into the room. I saw over their shoulders. There was blood in the carpet. Not a whole lot, not like a river, just flecks and specks all scattered around. But in the carpet itself, there were marks. It looked as if someone had sunk something sharp deep into the carpet and just dragged all along it. From the middle of the room all the way to the window, the carpet was just ripped to shreds, and there were specks of blood where the carpet was ripped. I don't remember much else. Just vague images from before I was hauled out of there. I remember one of the cops in the room opposite radioed and told someone, "Tell that stupid idiot to turn off his lights. They're lighting up the whole window." But that was at a completely different side of my house. There was no cop parked up there as far as I knew. Anyway, that's about the extent of my story. I got the house fixed up before I went back, and I stayed with my parents until I felt mentally ready to go back. I thought that if I went home and saw those marks, then I might have a panic attack. I have not had sleep paralysis since then. I have not seen those eyes again. I have not had so much as a nightmare, just peaceful dreams and peaceful sleep, as peaceful as they can be after something like that anyway. But it makes me feel uneasy in a weird, contradictory sort of way. I keep expecting to wake up and see it over me whenever I don't have a nightmare. I don't know anymore. Has anyone else had sleep paralysis as weird as this? Okay, so sorry for any bad spelling or grammar I'm posting on the phone. I don't live in a very rural area. Where I live, it's sort of near the shore, but the land has a lot of woods, and it's very marsh-filled. If you've ever seen those really dynamite blasted rocks in the woods, there's a shit ton of that. Anyways, I'm relatively young, and since it's pretty nice in some parts of the woods, I figure I want to set up a place deep in there for me and my friends. Now, my friends aren't lazy or anything, but they never really follow through on stuff. So, me being a nice guy McGee, I decide I will go in the woods all alone and set up the camp for everyone. It's winter break, and I have to hike pretty far into the woods before I find a flat clearing right on top of this rock, overlooking the woods. By the time I'm there and setting up, it's already getting darker, and those woods look really creepy at this point. I did not think much of it, but I decided I could not see any of my shit, and I should start heading back. Now, unlike you guys here, I did stupid shit a lot of the time, like go far off the trail. So, once I got all my ill set up shit packed, my stomach dropped once I realized I didn't have a clue where I was at all. I panicked and I tried to call someone so that they could help me out and pick me up somewhere on the road leading to the trail so I did not have to carry all of this stuff in the dark. Now, I don't actually buy all of those alien or cryptid stories or whatever. I'm really more of a ghost guy myself. I was looking out while the phone was ringing into the woods. Now, this rock was overlooking a sort of a valley, and the way the sub was shining through, the orange-red light mixed with the shadows and really sucked the details out, and I saw what I thought was a rock next to this bush. So, while I'm trying to get a hold of someone, suddenly, this rock gets up, like it were a person sitting crouched into a ball, and stepped behind this rock formation. It was really hard to see, but it didn't really look like a person. It was the same size though, but there was just something weird about how it moved, and it lacked any sort of clothes by the look of it, and mind you, it's winter, and the way it did move, it kept facing towards me, and I could have sworn it was peeking out from behind that cluster of tree and rocks. So I froze up, and I stopped what I was doing, and I yelled out, which I thought was pretty rude at the time. I was just assuming that someone was screwing with me. I tried to call one of my friends, but none of them are picking up. My dumbass did not realize that the service was out in my particular spot, so I start moving away from the site. Now, like I said, I don't believe in any of that cryptid stuff, but what I heard was not human. I thought it was like a jet overhead at first, but it seemed softer and more drawn out, and when I turned, what I saw was the most terrifying shit I have ever seen before in my life. It was hard to say, but something was staring at me through this cluster of trees just a few feet away from me. I could see its fingers and hands gripping the sides of the trees, and its face half obstructed through it all. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but one of those hands slid down the tree. It was so freaky how it almost seemed shy, like how it wanted to be near me, but it was afraid to get too close to me, almost like a little kid. When I said out loud, "Who is there?" it leaned over and peeked from behind the cluster of trees, and those eyes were so freaky, not like a person's at all. It was like they were almost protruding from its head, like they were not in sockets, they were bulged outwards. At that point, I just turned and booked it back to where I thought I came from. I didn't even feel winded or have any concept of time when I was running. I didn't know how much time passed at all. I even managed to mess up my ankle, and I didn't even realize until I got to the road. I guess I was just getting by on adrenaline. By the time I got inside my car, I realized I was crying a little bit, and the first thing I did when I got home was just chill and try to relax. It was really hard to say, but it did not really look like a person. It was the same size, but there was just something that did not seem right. I did not sleep that night or tell anyone about what I saw, and I never really got that stuff back until months later, during the summer. When I went there, surprisingly, the stuff was still up and there, except most of it had been rummaged through and strewn about the place, with the tent all messed up. though I honestly think that was the result of a storm or some animal. I never went camping when they did go, and that weird-ass noise still really sticks with me. Wait, OP, so you saw its face. What color was the thing? How tall? What kind of hair coverage? Skull shape? Face shape? Were there more than one of them? It was, pretty hard to say, since it was almost night out at that point. I got a good look at its hands, but the only thing I could make out about its face were those eyes, with the lighting. I could not tell if its hair was matted down, or if it lacked hair altogether. It was half obstructed by trees. I don't know if it's what I saw earlier, but if it was, it had to be maybe shorter than the average human in size. Okay, so I'm not sure if this story is actually paranormal, but in retrospect, some of the events just do not quite match up, so here is my story. I was staying at Camp Tomahawk at the time. There was this long lake there. It's in Minnesota, by the way. This was around 2 years ago. I was having a great deal of fun with my scout troop. I was spending my days in the wilderness, learning new things, new skills, eating stuff, all that kind of stuff. During this, I am taking the astronomy merit badge. One of the requirements of this merit badge is that you have to stay up and watch the stars late at night. A bit of a background. Camp Tomahawk has a sort of a tradition, wherein everyone who is doing that merit badge does that one night all together and not alone. The event is called the Star Party, and it would always be done on Wednesday nights. So, Wednesday arrives, the day passes, I experience nothing unusual, yet. At camp, a friend and I are hanging out by the fire, doing the absolute coefficient to fuck and all. This lasts until after dinner, which by the way was steak and potatoes. At around 9 p.m., Russell, me, and 7 others are all getting ready to take the long 1.25 mile track up to the parade field, which is the second largest clearing in our section of the camp. We start walking down the road and up through a trail that goes through a portion of the woods, a shortcut that cuts all of about 50 feet from our journey. Nothing appears out of the ordinary, except that it is a bit darker than it should be at 9 p.m. in July. I tell the others this, and they just chalk it up to weather, or more specifically, a storm. For reference, the rest of that night and the week afterward, it was perfect outside. We arrive at Star Party, and there are at least 150 people there. There's crazy stuff everywhere. Giant-ass Lincoln logs, bags of slushy, and a row of lighters set to pulse to music. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Me and Russell sort of party around for a bit. We even managed to score some weed off of a counselor, as inexplicable as that sounds. We get slushies and all of that other stuff. At around 12:30, both of us are getting really tired, so we decide to head back to the camp, just the two of us, in the absolute pitch black of the forest. We walk maybe half the distance, I don't know, it was really dark. It is at this point that I begin to hear a very faint buzzing. I tell Russell, who agrees that he can hear the sound as well. We keep walking toward the camp, and we get maybe 40 feet away from the entrance to the shortcut. This whole time, the buzzing has steadily been increasing in volume, but never getting loud enough to really warrant a great deal of suspicion. Suddenly, the buzzing kicks up at least 80 decibels, to the point where it almost hurts my ears. My eyes, my mouth, my body, they're all just covered in sandflies, mosquitoes, you name it. There had to have been hundreds more bugs than I had ever seen in one place. I'm talking like tens of millions of insects in a massive swarm that must have reached around 75 feet in the air. I just start dead out sprinting, unable to breathe. I can barely see. I can't hear anything but the buzzing of the swarm in my ears. I reach the start of the forest path, and I try my damnedest not to trip up as I run along it. The exact second that the camp and the light of the fire are in sight, the buzzing just stops. And I don't mean got quieter, I mean dead silence. Even the bugs that are still on me just stop making sounds and fly back the way I came. I find Russell, who was around 10 feet behind me, and we scurry back to the camp, where we find a couple of adults sitting around the fire. We asked them if they had seen or heard anything. They had not. The rest of the week was uneventful. Here's a short one. I work as a night guardian at a local brewery. They tell me that some teens are sometimes stealing beer barrels, and that I need to either confront them, which I was not going to do, or call the police. I get handed a huge-ass flashlight, keys, and nothing else. Nothing happens for several weeks. One night, I hear something out where the beer is stored. I go to look to see if I need to call the police. There are a bunch of teens, younger than me. 2 of them have smaller barrels with them. They are talking pretty quietly. They are not aggressive at all. I send a message to the cops to come over and wait, watching them, so I can tell the cops where they went if they leave before the police arrives. Suddenly, one kid just starts screaming while they are all still talking normally. He throws his barrel of beer into another kid's face, stomps onto his head when he falls, swings for one of the others, and then just takes off into the woods, throwing away his shirt, and then, as I found out later, the rest of his clothes. As he was running, he ripped off everything and threw it away. The kids he attacked survived. The one who got his head stomped on, only barely, due to the police arriving and me calling the emergency. I stopped working there, and weirdly enough, the papers wrote nothing about the entire thing. Creepy as hell, and I'm not gonna lie, I've been in fights before, but seeing this guy just stomping his friend's head in, no mercy, not even a second of thinking beforehand, it messed me up big time, and I was at least 15 meters away.